Hi everyone, welcome to ClearPoint Unlock Fireside Chat with myself. I'm Bain Hollister, I'm co-founder of ClearPoint, and today I have with me our GM of Engineering, specialising in the Microsoft space, Malen. Malen, awesome to be on a Fireside Chat with you, one of our first in our series, and we're here to talk about AI and LLMs. So, it's a big topic. I'm not quite sure where we're going to start. What do you think?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Yeah, really big topic, right? Everyone's talking about it. Wherever you go, that's the topic of the table, right? So, what do you think been happening in the AI space, especially in New Zealand and globally as well?
Yeah, I mean it's the breakout conversation of the year, isn't it? It's everywhere you go. It's what everybody's talking about, and our industry can be a little bit fashion oriented, and boy, is everybody focusing on this one this year. So everyone from investors globally to the large platform companies, all making big public announcements, and the whole world is changing. We've had events like this in the past. The internet came along, showing my age a little bit, and the grey beard, and then we had the smartphone movement come through as well. And there's these big moments that happen in our technology industry, and they're pretty profound, and they have an impact on all of us. And the theme of today, and we'll get to this as we talk a bit later on, is how do we harness these things? How do we make ourselves more productive? What sort of impact will they have on our day-to-day work? And we work together a lot, and we tend to take an aspirational, positive view of productivity as it comes down the line towards us. But this one is so big and so broad. It's going to be really, really interesting where it surfaces and where it lands.
Yeah. Because in your space, you speak to a lot of C-suite leaders in that area. I know for me, I speak to engineers around AI, right? And it's they're using it every day practically. But what's the talk amongst the leaders, whether this is a hype or it's going to be adopted?
I think for a lot of leaders, it's quite a challenging conversation. It's quite it's a sort of technology innovation that really captures the imagination. The demonstrations that you see online are amazing. And it's quite easy to forget that this is 40 years in the making. Neural net programming was when I was at university. It might have been the same for yourself.
Yeah.
It was a research area, and here we are. All of these years later, and Google did their seminal paper on transformer-based architecture for LLMs back in 2016, 2017, and that with our hyperscale has suddenly brought this technology forward, and it seems, from where we sit, to be an awful lot more effective than people even imagined, And when they started putting together demos, OpenAI last year, it just really captures the imagination of everyone. And coming back to talk about, the leaders and the C-suites and the directors, it's a bit of a global moment, and it's quite difficult to get their heads around. And it's very early on as well. So where this technology unpacks and where the experiences start to come through is still coming. And so it is really quite exciting, but the conversations are really kind of quite wide-ranging, and there are people all over that spectrum about what they think might happen. Something that's actually really quite interesting is we follow a few journalists out of the US. Obviously, the US is a leader in this field, and one of the framings that the journalist uses is that we don't necessarily, as humans, have a particularly strong understanding of what intelligence is in terms of a reference model. So it's quite difficult to talk about artificial intelligence in a synthetic way. And that means that a lot of people will storytell and use metaphors and say it's like this and it's like that. But we don't really have a model for understanding our own intelligence necessarily, or other beings on the planet's intelligence. But here we have the synthetic intelligence coming through. So it's a fascinating space.
Yeah.
And really interesting to see how it develops over the next period of time.
Yeah. It's hard to believe, right? It's more than a year, and so much has happened in the space of a year, adoption-wise as well.
It's amazing. It's the industry has responded. You see enormous amounts of investment activity. You see enormous amounts of startup activity, and then we see some really interesting corporate governance the other week around OpenAI. And Sam Altman is like something we might have seen on Netflix, but it's thankfully settled down now. And I think it's really it is really just symptomatic of it being a very young part of our industry and growing very, very quickly and being quite high value. So, hey, so look, a lot of people won't necessarily know, but Microsoft has been at this work for a long period of time now. I think Copilot's been available to engineers much earlier than last November. I'm interested to see what, through your work and the teams that you look after in the engineering space, how they think about this. They've been using it for a while, the productivity, that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think it's been out for a while, Copilot, before OpenAI developed anything. Microsoft had it part of their tool set as well, but it was closed off. It wasn't available to everyone. So Copilot, but now it's GitHub Copilot X. And the productivity gains has been, enormous just from what engineers would be able to do, not just coding, unit testing, troubleshooting, but in those early days there wasn't so much of uptake when it first kicked off, but now with OpenAI, it's just been a steady increase of people, not just engineers, but non-coders as well, adopting the tool set because now anyone can code.
Yes, yeah. You've seen that
so
message
you just
in the
don't
media
need
too.
to be a coder, right?
Yeah.
I started coding a bit now in Python as well, just because you can with the tools available.
Yeah, I saw it funny. There's lots of headlines around that. There's a redemption of the average coder can now become an amazing coder through use of the tools. So just decorating that, what does the adoption look like on a, if we've got a lot of engineers in the organisation and some of the senior guys, how do they work differently? How does that impact their kind of day-to-day? They sit down and code and just kind of, or are they doing prompt-based or?
Yeah, so it has been lots of productivity gains. You see like the value they're adding now is a lot more. So all those mundane tasks of adding unit testing, that can be done with AI. And they can focus on the real problems. So the amount of time that they're spending on fixing problems is actually better. And the second part, it's not just unit testing, the code that they produce, it's the troubleshooting. So the quality that they get is much better. So previously, engineer would go use Stack Overflow, Google, right? Go put a question in and then go and click on each one. And then go in, validate. It could be a wrong answer, could be a right answer. So you can see, like every time they go click out, and then validate something. Now, in one window, they can just get the answers that they need. And it's most of the time, it's 100%, 90 to 100% correct. So lots of productivity gains for them, as well as the context switching is minimal these days.
That's incredible. And I know it's really early days, but do we have a line of sight on how that affects squads and teams and how they work together? Often it's a productivity on a per person basis, but do they blend differently or?
I think that's still at the earlier stages, because now you're getting engineers working with an AI, trying to harvest that type of code where you're not just writing the code, you're getting the machine to write the code for you and you putting it together. But on the squad basis, I think there still needs to be some adoption. And that comes from companies as well, how they adopt AI so that everyone gains. Right now, it's more the engineers on an individual level that's getting that coding and productivity gains. So early days are.
That is really interesting. It's kind of where we're at in the cycle, isn't it? There's a new capability that's come along on a kind of almost a per engineer basis, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, kind of in teams and systems and larger environments.
Yeah. And coming back to how the engineers are working, because I know you're trying to do a bit of that at ClearPoint. How has the adoption been, and how have you tried to bring that within ClearPoint from organization point of view?
Yeah. I mean, it's it's just going to be such an interesting journey and change for the entire industry, and it is such a broad-based capability that's on what's here. It's not on the horizon. It's here with us, and nobody really knows exactly how it's going to play out across engineering, but also through office productivity and platforms and hyperscalers and everything. And I suppose just as a quick digression there, it does look and feel like this capability is going to surface itself through lots and lots of different avenues of how we use technology every day. So obviously, it's engineering, as we've just been talking through, but also how we consume lots of different services and lots of different tools that we use. And we will all have seen it, just creeping into our normal tools, whether it's kind of office productivity type things or in your devices or what have you, just starting to come into play too. So I think that's a really interesting aspect, that we'll just naturally adopt more digital, more powerfully digital tools.
Yeah.
And coming back to ourselves, it's one of these sorts of changes where, because it is so early and so fast moving, we're focused on two things. One is thinking about it as best we can in an abstract way. Like, how do we even think about the change that's coming, and what sort of in what sort of dimensions will it impact us? Because we know that day to day there's so many announcements and things changing, it's kind of well underway, and trying to sort of tease out, I suppose, the things that can be breathtaking demos and maybe a little bit hype oriented, to those things that look quite profound, and that's quite fun. And the senior folks that we deal with and working through those will be really fun over the next period of time. The other aspect to that is within the guardrails of safety, so making those as wide as we can, but as safe as we can, really encouraging the team and trying to foster a culture of play and storytelling, as well as some structured training in there if we can do that. And people learn through play, and they learn through experimentation, and it's a very experiential period. So we instituted AI Mondays, so we're encouraging anyone in the organisation who's been, it could be anything from our marketing team to our sales team to our engineering teams, the digital advisory team, to come and show and tell some of the things that they've been doing, adopt the tools as best they can, make sure all our client data is well looked after and safe and compliant. But within that, how can we change our workflows? What's new? What's exciting? And just trying to generate a little bit of that momentum early on of curiosity, and trying to separate out the things that are really quite high impact from the other things that are perhaps still a bit further out, and lifting that conversation up as high as we can as well. So everyone is involved, all the leaders. We talk to our board about it. We talk to our senior exec teams and our clients as well. And as we start this conversation, everyone wants to talk about it anyway. So, there's our propensity often is to find the latest tool and find the latest shiny thing. We want to balance that with some conceptual thinking as well around where do we think profound changes are going to come, and how do we position ourselves to help around those things.
That AI Monday, I think, is quite a clever technique, right? Having that weekly on a Monday, getting not just engineers, but other folks, non-technical as well, to demonstrate.
Yeah, and the idea is to have a bit of fun with that, and so it's almost like sitting around the fire, as storytelling around the things we say. And certainly, what we storytell and experiment with today is going to be different in 3 or 4 months' time, and different again next year potentially. And in the meantime, it gets everyone's curiosity up and gets people thinking about how they work and their own individual workflows throughout the day as well, and how we can make ourselves more productive around those things.
Yeah. Coming back to something you just mentioned now around new technology, do you think it's a new technology, or is this like a changing the way everything or the world's going to operate?
Personally, I think it's a result of an awful lot of innovation and research that most of us, and certainly everyone in the street, probably doesn't realise has been going on for a long period. And it is those aha moments, those demos where you can ask it to do things, or to write emails or respond, or all those things that you thought it was you were good at, and it's a bit of a moment when you see a capability like that. Do it for you. I've got a few tools I'm using and playing around with, and one of the features, and one of them is write like me, and it has a small sample of some of my writing, and I put a few bullets in, and it writes like I write, which is a bit of holding up the mirror about the way I write, but it's very fast and it's very accurate, and it's a really great starting point for some of the things, if it's an email or a communication or something like that. And I think maybe those small things are quite an interesting way to start to at least develop a bit of familiarity. There's a few. We also use that concept amongst the team of having a sidekick, or a very talented superpower. I know people talk about centaurs, like people with sitting on top of a very powerful capability. and how we then harness that and get familiar with that and make sure we use that in a way that's safe and it's ethical and consistent with our values and our mission and our purpose is kind of is the direction of travel that we're heading in. Where we actually end up with all those individual things is still a voyage of we're still intrepid around how we're gonna get there and do that.
Yeah. Any advice that you have to leaders in C-suite, how they would go about fostering this culture, or how they would get uptake within the organization around AI?
Yeah, I think it's and it is a conversation that we do have quite often with a lot of our colleagues and stakeholders in the industry. Step one is learning, and we're lucky in our industry because learning has always been a competency. There's not much point knowing a lot about NT4, which is way back in the day, and we've always had to stay current and learn. And this one is maybe it's quite a big step up, but develop it, making sure that curiosity is there from a leadership perspective, and that we're open and walking towards that is a key step. And it's easy to perhaps underestimate how difficult that is for leaders because there is some vulnerability in things that you don't know and that look quite game changer in their nature. And then, as best you can, leading through that transition is encouraging and supporting everyone within that and focusing on, your values and your purpose and your mission and creating value helps guide you through that, I think. And the reason that we grab some of that framing is that it's quite easy to jump to the tools and the brand and the any particular flavour, and this does look like it'll be really widespread across lots and lots of the global vendors. Your teams operate pretty strongly in the Microsoft ecosystem, but you've also got visibility of innovation within the LLMs and models elsewhere. Is there a kind of race happening that the engineers see?
It feels like a race, right? Because you get announcement by vendor X, and then you get another announcement by another company, right? Microsoft is probably, I'd say, leading right now, just because of their partnership with OpenAI and NVIDIA. But I think just as everything's happened previously, that the open source world would win eventually, just because of history, and the world or the other industries are gonna catch up to what's been happening. But definitely for now, Microsoft is at the forefront of these technologies with the announcements from OpenAI daily. Last 2 weeks ago was their dev days, lots of new announcements.
OpenAI Dev Day?
Yeah, OpenAI Dev Days. Yeah, lots of new announcements with private GPTs. I think everyone knows now, okay, the value is here using LLM, but we also want to look at security, having our own machine trained with our data. So it looks like, that's the way that OpenAI is going, private GPTs. Let's see what happens, but interesting space.
Oh, fascinating space.
Yeah.
And I think that it is so fast moving, right? And is there any insight from the teams at the moment? I know we've talked a little bit about productivity and engineers and how they work.
Yeah.
But the actual things that get architected and built and developed and where the models might sit within those architectures and how they might be used in products and experiences for clients. I know it's really super early days, but is there any kind of thinking in that space?
Yeah, good. So I think, like the engineers said before, the early adopters, they're starting to use it, but now we need to see what comes next with the enterprises and architectures as well, whether that comes into the mix, right? We've seen a move with companies going towards microservices, containers as well. But now is the opportunity to maybe swap out one of those microservices with the LLM. It can do basically the same thing, right? But you're going to look at whether you have a LLM with the prompt engineering as well. I think those two, a combination of those two, will actually be what the future of architecture will look like.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So lots of logic into those microservices, but that logic can be replaced with some clever prompts with LLM on top of that. So that's where I think it's going to be heading. But yeah, the topic of prompt engineering is quite large as well. Because when you're dealing with something as intelligent as a large language model, so the LLM is on the right,
My left,
and
yeah.
yeah, okay, and you're gonna have the prompt engineering on the left hand side, because it's not just text completion. It's not like Google where you put in a question, you get an answer, right? To be able to leverage or make the maximum use of the large language model, we also need to scale up, right? Increase the equation on the left-hand side, right? So having good prompts, learning prompt engineering, these techniques are the one where we can really leverage the AI and the large language models.
And does that seem or feel in some ways maybe a transitionary period? I mean, obviously we have to get all our skills up and figure out the best way to interact with these models. I've seen a commentator talk about, in the early days we had a prompt on a PC, and you type your commands in, and then Microsoft had a breakthrough with Windows many years ago, and changed the way everyone interacted with personal computing. And so, do you think there's a future where the user experience changes that dramatically?
Yeah. I think the natural language querying is going to be what the new sort of programming language is going to be, right? That's why anyone these days can code.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, very interesting space.
Yeah. So if we think about a lot of the organizations that we've worked with and the clients and the journey that they're on with their teams and their technology and journeys to the cloud and automation and all those sorts of things. And then this capability comes along, and the role that it's going to play in the future for them. It's very early days. How are we? How are the guys thinking about that? How are the teams looking at that? Obviously, we can drive some amazing productivity out of small, highly capable squads.
Yeah, I think the companies or enterprises that have done the transformation, the digital transformation, they're going to be at a good platform now to really leverage the large language models. But enterprises or companies that are still running on VMs or on-prem, they are definitely in trouble. It's going to take them a longer time to make that transition. So it's either they go quit, use large language model, and get on that platform, or they lag behind at a longer pace.
So that looks like over the next period of time, there's a lot of strategic thinking for organisations to do, and there's some optionality around how they try and jump this.
Yeah.
And those that are in good fighting shape already in terms of having their data organised and maybe some automation within their teams,
Yeah.
agile ways of working, or product teams, or have you perhaps more ready than others.
I think a lot more, what you mentioned about steps that they need to take is also that reflection about where do you want to be. There's opportunity here. Do you want to take advantage of that or not? And how we take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So a bit of reflection and going, here's opportunity, let's do it.
It's a really good point, actually, because I think that particularly in our part of the world, in New Zealand, there's a really great opportunity for us to, because we are small and we can often move a little bit quicker, to be early adopters and have an aspirational, optimistic viewpoint in business around how we can actually become more competitive internationally and move a bit quicker than our larger neighbours potentially. I think it's a really interesting and aspirational option for New Zealand.
Yeah, I think this suits New Zealand quite a bit, right? Because as you say, we're a small country. We also do clever things with a little smaller workforce. So it's a great opportunity for us to test the waters, right? We can be the test bed of how we can have those productivity gains and what we can take advantage. So exciting times.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. So wrap up question for you. Just pretend, talk to me like I'm a model. Pretend I'm a highly, I'm an energized young engineering graduate coming out into the big wide world. I've done all my training at university. What sort of advice given the context of AI and LLM, what do we talk to the young people coming into the industry about?
Good question, right? I think coming out of university, you got a good foundation, especially if you've done some of those base maths courses and computer science courses as well. That'll really put them into a good position. And I think, adding some of those prompt engineering courses on top of that and being able to use all the tools that you have will really, be in a good position to move forward in that direction.
Yeah, it's a great space. I 100% agree. And I think that for young people coming into the industry, it's exciting, it's vibrant, and it's dynamic. The sense that some things might be automated away is actually an opportunity to be growing and into areas that we probably don't even know what the roles will be in 5-10 years time in our industry. But it's a growth period.
Yeah. That's a good point, right? I think when AI came out, people thought there's going to be job cuts for engineers because the machine can do all the coding, but we've seen that's not actually the trend that's happening, and engineers are actually still in demand just because now they are good prompt engineers. It's just they're going to change the way they work.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, and wrap-up question from me to you. So 2024, ClearPoint, how's it looking for AI for 2024?
It's looking
in your
great.
mind, yeah. Exciting times.
It is really exciting times. I think this wave coming through the industry and the talent that we have in our team is that we're just in a really privileged and lucky position to be able to lead in terms of engineering, lead in terms of the work that our clients want to do, and I say lead mostly from how we thought lead through this next period, and how that then translates into value that we can create. Being native software engineers from the very beginning is quite helpful for us because we can understand the fundamentals of what sits behind AI and LLMs and think in quite practical terms, but also in strategic terms around how we can bring this into clients and our own ways of working. I think it's going to be a really exciting period over the next few years.
Thanks, Ben. It's been a really good session, learning about how you feel about AI and where ClearPoint's heading towards. So thanks again for your time.
Likewise. Thanks, Malen. It was really cool to get your insights around engineering and the changes that are here and that are coming. And it's all really exciting.